Greg's phone, it's your fault.
Yeah, it's always my fault.
Well, as long as we got that handled. Well, let's go. We got 3 things to talk about. We got Hell in a Cell.
Yep.
We got
Raw and Nitro.
Raw and Nitro. Man, let me tell you something about that Hell in a Cell match. That was a pretty good wrestling match.
Still good.
There's times when you always wonder, haven't seen this in many years, is it going to hold up? And you watch it back and you think, that was so much better than I even remembered it.
Not only was it so good, but Hell in a Cell's coming up. And we've got Roman Reigns versus Rusev.
That's not going to be as good.
God bless those men. It won't be this good.
You got Roman Reigns and Rusev, and apparently Charlotte and Sasha also in a cell. I hope no one thinks about trying to go off the top of that thing.
That's not
Hopefully somebody doesn't gig from their top of their forehead to their nose.
Nothing good can happen.
Hey, Craig, if you're going to gig, don't go halfway.
I'm talking with the women, Brian.
You got to go all the way. It's all or nothing, baby. Let me tell you how great this match was. It was really great.
Yeah.
Fuck star ratings and was it 4 3/4? Was it 5? Who gives a shit?
It was 5.
It was a classic. It was an all-time great match featuring 2 all-time great performers. And I was looking back at it. I was thinking, you know, Shawn and Undertaker had this feud, and Shawn won this Hell in a Cell match. Despite what he looked like at the end, he was the winner in the record books. And then it all came full circle a decade later, 2 decades, 15 years later, when they had their WrestleMania series. And Undertaker got rid of this fucker once and for all. Poetry. The storyline was poetry. The feud was poetry. It was so great. Let me talk about the best part of the match. I'll just do all the talking here for now. You guys ain't saying nothing.
Because interrupting you works so well.
The best part of this match is Shawn just gets his ass handed to him for about 30 minutes. And finally, he cuts off The Undertaker. And he proceeds to do a bunch of moves. And then he does his big comeback. And he does his flying forearm and his kip up and the flying elbow. And he starts tuning up the band. Now, before this happened, he had been backdropped onto the cameraman. So, of course, it was so great because you got to get this cameraman out of here. We must open the door. This cameraman may be dead. Wasn't some bullshit where someone raised the cage or some preposterous deal. We still don't know who raised that one Hell in a Cell years ago. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I don't even remember the match, but I know we don't know.
I think it was Hunter.
It was never, I think it was Hunter Austin or something.
Austin was involved.
But anyway, the point of this is there was a perfectly logical reason to open up the cage door. A cameraman had been killed.
Not to mention, Shawn wiped him out with falling over the top rope to the floor, but then he proceeded to beat him up.
Sure.
After that.
Point is, the guy needed to be saved. So they sent out Slaughter and his merry band of miscreants, and they open up the door, and they drag this guy's carcass out. And the fucking timing of the moment, and this is not amazing timing, it's just so goddamn smart. The moment they're opening the door to bring the cameraman out, Shawn Michaels has done his full comeback, and he hits the super kick, and the moment he hits the move, the Undertaker sits up. And Shawn realizes, holy fuck, like I'm fucked. And the fucking door's open. The timing was so great. And he fled for his life. It's just so awesome. Then he gets killed out there. Let me tell you about one other great thing. You guys may have something to say, I'm not sure.
I'm just letting you finish.
Shawn's up on top of the cage, okay? Now, I don't know if you guys remember the Hell in a Cell with Mick Foley. Do you remember that match?
How can you forget it?
He was
Seemed to ring a bell.
thrown off the top.
He died twice.
How many times have we seen the footage of that? It's like they're on top of the cage, and then Undertaker grabs him, he just throws his ass off.
Right.
I mean, it was like spectacular and everything. Mm-hmm. But let's compare it to what happened here. Shawn is on top of the cage, and first he goes for a pile driver, and he gets backdropped, but he still lands on the cage. It was like, oh, fuck. And the announcers are freaking out like, oh my God, all the metal's, it's about to break. Mm-hmm. And there's a cameraman underneath. To this day, it's never not funny, where this stupid fucker is right under Shawn as he's face down bleeding a gusher, and the camera's filming right up at him, and apparently Shawn's blood just like falls down right into the guy's mouth, and he goes, oh shit! And it's like, it's your fault, you dumb motherfucker.
He got on the lens. It's the best part.
That's right. And then Shawn gets punched, and he takes another bump, and he gets precariously close to the edge. And so then he goes climbing over the edge, and Undertaker grabs his hair, and Shawn's like hanging, and his legs are swinging back and forth.
Feet are waving.
Yep, feet are waving. And so then he's hanging, and he's hanging by two hands. And what do? Well, Undertaker looks at him, and first he stomps on one hand, and now Shawn Michaels is hanging from one hand, and then he stomps on the other hand, and instead of immediately letting go, he stomps on the second hand. Shawn looks behind him, then he lets go, and then he falls like 2 feet through a table. But the fucking thing was built up so well that you may as well have thrown him off like 5 cages.
2 feet.
It was so fucking awesome. He didn't fall far, dude.
It was more than 2 feet.
It may have been 3.
It was less than 6.
It was less than 6. It was less than off the top of the cage. Anyway, you guys can speak now. Just the best match.
You aren't giving anything here nearly enough credit.
Of course not.
It is so much better than you're making it out to go.
It's impossible.
It is. This, when it was done and I was driving over here, all I was thinking was, I just witnessed wrestling perfection. That was a perfect match from Shawn Michaels. That was a perfect match from The Undertaker. That was a perfect match from Vince McMahon. That was a perfect match by the referee. That was a perfect match by the cameramen, all of them. That was a perfect match by Kane. That was a perfect match by Paul Bearer. That was a perfect match by Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Chyna. Everything involved in this went as well as it possibly could have. I mean, as great as these men are, and as much work went into this, it's still a miracle how much everything was perfect.
It was absolutely perfect.
If they did this 1,000 times, it would be worse 1,000 times.
Not sure about that.
This was...
I saw their 2 Mania matches when they were 15 years older.
Those were good too. But even from the click comes out, and it's Shawn Michaels, and he's, as always, full of himself, having a grand old time. And Taker's doing his entrance, which takes a while. And Taker gets in the ring, and he's calmly removing his robe or cape, whatever that thing was. And they're locking the door. And it dawns on Shawn just what he has gotten himself into.
I am trapped.
He looks at Taker. He looks at this door. He looks at the lock on the door. He's testing the chain. Hunter and Chyna are outside. They're testing the door like, wait a minute, no one told us it would be locked. Come on now. Even though that was made clear in every single promo leading up to this. And Shawn looks up, left, down, right, behind him, anywhere, trying to find any kind of escape route. And of course he can't. So he has no option but to fight. And I know you know this spot, Brian, because I think you wanted to do it in every single match you and I ever did.
Oh, yeah.
The very first spot was, at least when you were a heel, Shawn charges a Taker and like ducks a clothesline.
Yep.
But he comes back and runs right into a big boot.
Oh, yeah. Loved it.
Goes flying through the air. And for the next 10 minutes, it sucks to be Shawn Michaels.
Dude, for the next 30 minutes.
I'd forgotten how cartoony he was in the first part of this match. The bumps he was taking, just the overdramatic oversell, almost reminiscent of his match with Hogan. And then it got serious.
I don't know if I'd call it that. It was just amazing.
Ordinarily, I'm a big fan of guys showing emotion throughout the wrestling match. Show me anger, show me excitement, show me despair, show me happiness, whatever. But the fact that for 10 minutes, The Undertaker dismantled this human being, he performed an autopsy for us all on Shawn Michaels' body.
Dude, he's The Undertaker.
With a complete blank stare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much better. Just throwing him in and out of the ring. By the way, knowing there's the famous bumps Shawn takes in this match, the bump on top of the cage, the bump off the cage of the table. There's 2 or 3 bumps before that are so much worse. When he goes flying out of the ring and takes a flat back bump on the floor, bad times.
You know what, though? What we got to remember is they hadn't changed the rings yet. So I'm watching Shawn Michaels take clotheslines in the middle of the ring and his fucking head bounces off the... How did this guy not... I mean, he must have had like 35 concussions in his career.
That is possible.
Probably 10 of them in this match alone.
So Taker's beating him and beating him and beating him. And we just watched that ROH pay-per-view where I was talking about how a lot of guys will just... I'll do a counter hit and move. You do a counter hit and move over and over and over again. And it gets numbing and repetitive. Shawn's taking this beating that is so severe. And even though he's the heel, Taker has the heat on him. And it just works. Trust me. But Shawn needs a hope spot just to let fans know there's something to watch for. There's still some reason to keep tuning in. So here was Shawn's hope spot. He ducked a punch. Then when he tried to throw a punch of his own, Taker blocked and hit him anyway. But that one duck was just enough to let you know Shawn's still fighting. At last, Shawn is able to dodge a charge. Taker throws himself into the cell, and Shawn's able to get some sustained offense for a while. He climbs the cage and drops an elbow. He drops the stairs on Taker's back. And 2 or 3 times, when Shawn has the heat, 2 or 3 times, cameramen get in his way. And they're always sure to cut to the camera that is in his way so you can see that Shawn turns to him and shoves him and says, "Get the F out of here." Arr. Just to let you know, there's lots of cameramen in this match. There's lots of cameramen in the cell, and they're all in Shawn's way. Shawn hits a pile driver on the flat part of the stairs. That could not have felt good. He grabs a chair. They got so much out of one chair shot to the back. They killed like a minute of Shawn just teasing this and teasing this and teasing this. Well, finally whacking him and getting one cover, and Taker kicks out. So we get the spot where Shawn charges and Taker backdrops him over and he lands on the cameraman. This is, again, not the first time a cameraman has gotten in Shawn's way. So between that and the fact that Shawn is an asshole anyway, it makes sense when Shawn just beats the crap out of this guy. Tears into him, goes back in and goes into Shawn Michaels comeback mode. Forearm, kip up, elbow, the whole works. And Sarge is coming out, and as Bryan noted, the timing on all this was so perfect. So perfect. Vince is saying that man has a family. We apologize to his family. One of the announcers says something about he'll probably file a lawsuit. So they're getting him out of the cage. And then Shawn hits the super kick. And Taker does the zombie sit-up. And when Shawn does the kick, it's not like he stopped and turned his back and posed. He hits the kick, and in the natural motion of hitting the kick, spins around, just like it does a full 360. But in that part, that fraction of a second his back was turned is when Taker does the sit-up. So by the time Shawn turns around, he has thrown his kick and Taker has already sat back up. And now Shawn panics. He tries to flee. They're fighting outside the cage. Shawn does a drop kick, which means he jumps in the air and lands flat on his back on the cement. Jesus. Tries another one. Taker catches him and goes for a slingshot.
I think Taker was supposed to catch him on the first one, and he didn't.
I remember
So
you and I
Shawn
having this
just
discussion
smashed.
once. Shawn's feet go into his chest.
I'm pretty sure that doesn't matter.
It matters for Shawn's chiropractor. Taker does a slingshot. Shawn gigs from the floor, goes flying up, hits a gusher, blood everywhere. And as they're fighting, blood gets on multiple camera lenses, which is just the best thing that can happen in a wrestling match. Taker slingshots him in the cage, throws him into the cage over and over and over again. Finally, Shawn is so desperate, he hits a low blow. It's time to fight dirty or die. With nothing else to do, he's tried everything. He's hit his best move on the guy and hit him with a chair, and he's still fighting. It's time to run away. It's time to run to the top of the cage. Because everything else had failed. Why not?
Because he's a stupid heel.
Perhaps the Undertaker will not be able to climb.
You know what? Looking at the Undertaker, it's not a bad strategy.
No.
Well, no, it is a bad strategy. But you would think it's
He's
not a bad
scurried right
strategy.
up there because he's Taker. But yes, if I was fighting a 6'8" monster and had the opportunity to go climb something to get away from him, that might be my plan. Taker had no problem climbing this cage, and there were not the Mick Foley handholds in the thing either. This is just a chain link fence he climbed up. So they get up there. The crowd's never seen anything like this before in their lives. And it's all just, I'm sure it didn't feel good landing on the steel mesh, but it had some give. It had some bounce. So there's bumping up there once or twice Shawn does. There's a press slam up there. There's the backdrop up there. And as you noted, Taker just hits one punch, just a punch, and Shawn goes flying through the air and rolls over to the side of the edge to very carefully lower him up into position where he's got his feet on like the crossbar halfway down and his feet on the very top, or his hands on the very top. And yeah, Taker stood over him for a while. First he grabbed his head and Shawn's feet waved. And Taker says, "Hell with this." And he raises his right foot high into the air and he pauses and he brings it down like a pile driver on Shawn Michaels' hand. And Shawn starts waving his hand in agony and pain. And then Taker does the same to the other hand. And Shawn is able to balance on that cross beam for just a second, just enough to wave his arms backwards and go windmilling through the table, which explodes. And he is left unmoving in a pile of rubble and blood. This is the best match I ever saw, I've decided, just now. They go down and Shawn's done and Taker's just having fun. Beal him onto the announce desk, press slam him off it, drag him back over to the door. Shawn now, he can barely crawl. His own hair is sticking to the blood that is sticking and clotting over his face. He is a savage, carnal wreck. Taker throws him in the ring, choke slam off the middle rope. He grabs the chair. This whole thing started when Shawn hit a chair shot at SummerSlam. It's time for Taker's ultimate revenge. I don't want to say I enjoy seeing guys get hit in the head with chairs, but it fit. It just fit. Shawn's doomed. All that's left is for Taker to make it official and hit his finisher and pin him. But then the lights go out. And there's mysterious organ music playing that no one had heard at this point in 1997. And it's Kane's theme, and out walks Paul Bearer with the debut of the Big Red Machine. Kane power walks down to the ring. Easily tears the door off its hinges. Just yanks it off the cell. The cell that had kept Shawn Michaels out and Triple H, or Shawn Michaels in and Triple H out. He gets in, and there's Taker watching all this, and he sees Paul Bearer. He knows what Paul's been promising and threatening for months now. This is his younger brother, Kane. And Taker, last he heard, his younger brother Kane died in a fire these many years ago. And Taker is bewildered, he is shocked, he is stunned, and I think he's also heartbroken. This was his brother, back after all these many years. And somewhere inside the dead man, there's a little heart beating with familial bonds.
It's making the story better than it is.
They have this stare down. Taker's beside himself, doesn't know what to do. I swear he was on the verge of tears. The Undertaker. Kane sets off his corner pyro. There's bright fire everywhere. Taker is distracted. He turns around. Kane picks him up, spins him over, displays him to the crowd on all four sides of the ring, drops him with a tombstone. Message sent. He departs. Now, I'm not sure what happened to the ref. I guess he got exploded in the fire, but he was down. And Shawn drags himself out of a puddle of his own blood to place a hand on the Undertaker and lie in a new puddle of his own blood. And the ref crawls over and does the most dramatic 3 count of all time. And officially, Shawn wins. Now, on top of everything else, here's why this was a perfect wrestling match. Technically, you could call this a fuck finish. But it's not. People paid because for months now, Shawn Michaels had deserved a royal ass kicking. Do you know what Shawn got in this match? 9 royal ass kickings. He was destroyed.
And 16 stitches.
16 stitches. So if you want to see Shawn Michaels get your ass kicked, you got your money's worth. If you want to see Taker get his hand raised in victory, well, you're going to have to pay now to watch Taker do battle with this monster Kane. See where that goes. And, of course, they have Shawn set up to do battle with Bret at Survivor Series, which we will talk about in great detail in the coming weeks.
You know, I'm glad that I watched this match today and not before the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, because I loved the ladder war, but man,
nope.
The vision at the end of that show of both Young Bucks sitting on top of that ladder smiling and flexing with their belts after the fucking ass kicking they took in that match. Meanwhile, Shawn is dead. I don't know who, the hand of God, lifted him up and put him on the Undertaker. This man's a corpse. And they send out Triple H and China, and they pick his body up out of the rubble, and they start dragging him to the ropes. And here's a key. Let us remember our friend Ravishing Rick Rude, who every single time Ravishing Rick Rude is with DX, or the Clique as they are called at this point, he looks like he'd like to be anywhere but hanging out with the Clique.
That's true.
He clearly cannot stand Shawn Michaels. He clearly cannot stand Triple H. Probably doesn't care one way or the other about China. He was hired. This was the job he was given. You hear his promos. You can tell he just hates everything. He fucking leaves like 2 weeks later. Rick Rude ran his ass down to the ring, and with the look of respect on his face, he fucking sits there and he herks those ropes open to let Shawn Michaels out of this ring, because Shawn Michaels was a total asshole during this period. He was a complete dick. But you know what? He was so fucking unbelievable. And Rick Rude, a great worker himself, probably watched this whole match and went, I gotta hold the ropes open for this fucker. I've gotta let this guy out. The respect that everybody had for Shawn Michaels as they dragged his ass out of the ring is amazing. And boy, he sold it like he was dead.
Oh, yeah.
They showed up on Raw the next night. What do you do that for? Should have been out for a year.
I actually watched Raw first. And now that I'm sitting here watching this now, I agree. He should have done his promo. The first scene in Rocky 2.
He should have been wrapped up like a mummy with
Yes.
somebody that was reading it for him.
The first scene in Rocky 2, it's been many years since I've seen it, so forgive me if I get some details wrong. But it's Rocky and Apollo having a discussion in the hospital after their fight. And Rocky has to like wheel himself down the aisle just to talk to Apollo. That's how Shawn should have been. He should have cut this promo from the emergency room.
Cameron and I watched the ROH pay-per-view on Friday, and the ladder war was very violent,
Yeah.
and he was okay with it. You know what I mean. And so I sat down to watch this. Said, Cameron, come here and check this out. You got to watch this match. And I was explaining to him that Kane had not been seen or heard of in WWE until this very night. And two things. Actually, just one thing. When Kane came out, my son said, "That's Kane?" Because you see, my son has never seen Kane with a mask.
How's that possible? He wore a mask last year.
He hasn't seen him with a mask.
Wow.
Had no idea.
This is what Kane should look like.
Absolutely.
This mask is awesome.
But yeah, he was we got done and he declared that the best thing he's ever seen.
Yes.
Wow.
Wise young man.
How about that?
Need to donate to his college fund for that.
Well, it was amazing. And that did lead us to Raw.